morning, boys and girls, and welcome to MVBC Kids. We're so glad you could join us today. We're going to start off our time together by singing a couple songs. So I want everyone to stand up and join us as we sing I've Got Joy Down in My Heart. Ready? I've got joy down in my heart, deep, deep down in my heart. J-O-Y down in my heart, deep, deep down in my heart. Jesus gave it to me, and nobody can destroy it. I've got joy down in my heart, deep, deep down in my heart. Great singing. All right, keep up the good work. This time we're going to sing This World Is Not My Home, I'm Just a Passing Through. Ready? This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid out somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Great job. Now listen up as we start our Bible story. I hope you'll get ready to sit still and listen as we learn about one of my favorite Bible characters today, Queen Esther. Thanks for joining us. All right, boys and girls, I hope you're ready to listen to the Bible story now. I had to go get something special for my head to go along with the story we're learning about. I told you we were going to talk about Queen Esther. Now, Queen Esther is very special because she got her own book in the Bible that tells her whole story. How awesome is that? But there is something special about the book of Esther as well. Something you might kind of think is strange. The name of God is never mentioned, not one time in the whole book of Esther. You might say, Miss Bookout, that's so strange. Does that mean God wasn't with Esther? That God just left her alone? Not at all. I hope you'll listen and find out the ways that God showed himself really there and mighty in Esther's life. And God had a special plan for Esther. And I want y'all to realize that God didn't just pick Esther to have a special plan for. He has a special plan for each and every one of you. And if you'll stay close to him, he will use you in great and mighty ways that you would never imagine. You may not be a queen. You may. Who knows? But you know what? Whatever it is, if it's what God wants you to do, it's the best thing you could ever do. So listen now as we start the story of Esther. To start off our story, Esther was not the queen at the beginning of the story. In fact, the whole first chapter is a different queen. Her name was Queen Vashti. The king's name was King Ahasuerus, also called King Xerxes. He was the most powerful man in the world. In the third year of his reign, he invited all the nobles and princes to a feast that lasted 180 days. That's almost 6 months. The king ruled over the entire empire of the Medes and the Persians. It stretched from Ethiopia in Africa all the way to India. Living in this empire were many Jews. After the feast, the king invited everyone to his palace in Shushan to another feast that lasted 7 days. There were all kinds of beautiful things hanging in his palace. It was decorated so fancy, just like you could imagine a palace or a castle would look. Everything was the best. Everyone even drank from cups made out of gold. Queen Vashti had a party for the women in another part of the palace. Well, at the end of the 7 days, the king, who was drunk, ordered his 7 servants to fetch Queen Vashti so he could show off her beauty. Now, this was not a good decision. They came back and reported that Vashti, Queen Vashti, said no, she would not come. This made the king so angry. His wise men advised him, saying, "The queen has not only insulted you, but she has insulted all of us in front of your kingdom. She has set a bad example by not showing honor to her husband. The queen's title was taken away from her, and Vashti was no longer the queen. The king also made a law and read it throughout the land that all wives must honor and obey their husbands. That takes us to chapter 2 in Esther. Who would replace the queen? They needed a new queen in the palace. So the search went out for the most beautiful women in all the kingdom. Every woman was hoping she would get chosen to be the next queen. Could you imagine what it would feel like to be the next queen? How exciting. Working in the palace was a man named Mordecai. He was a Jew, and he had a niece or a cousin named Esther, and she had been raised by him all of her life because her parents had died. Esther was a beautiful young girl and chosen to be one of the contestants to be the next queen. They got to go to the palace for 12 months a year to get ready just to meet the king. What an event that must have been. Of the many women that were chosen to try out in this beauty pageant to be the next queen, Esther was the one the king loved the most. She was crowned the next queen. A feast was given in her honor, but she didn't tell anyone that she was a Jew because Mordecai had told her to keep it a secret. A little while later, Mordecai was guarding the king's gate and overheard two of the servants talking and plotting against the king. Mordecai immediately warned Esther of this plot, and she told the king. The two men were arrested and found guilty. It was recorded in the king's book of Chronicles, where it was noted that Mordecai was the one who had discovered these bad men and their plan. Chapter 3. The king promoted Haman to be his right-hand man, to be over all the other princes, and to be the second most powerful man in the kingdom. All of the servants working at the king's gates would bow down to Haman because he was almost like the king. However, Mordecai, any time Haman passed by, would not bow down to Haman or show him reverence. Others started to notice that he was not bowing down like everyone else. They said, "Why are you breaking the king's command and not bowing down to honor Haman?" The servants asked him. They knew Mordecai was a Jew. They kept asking, but Mordecai would not listen to them. They told Haman what was going on. He was furious to find out that someone wouldn't bow down to him. I mean, after all, he was the second in command in the kingdom. Didn't they know that everyone should bow down and show him respect and honor and reverence him as if he were the king? This made him so angry, and he found out that Mordecai was a Jew, and he had to figure out a way to punish Mordecai, not just Mordecai, but all the Jews. He had so much hatred in his heart, and he was so angry that someone would not bow down to him. So Haman went to the king and said, "O King Ahasuerus, did you know that we have people living here in your kingdom who have their own laws, and they don't think they have to obey your laws of the land?" "What?" the king said. Haman said, "Oh, yes, king. We need to pass a law so that they can be destroyed. We don't want people not obeying your laws here in the land." He said, "I'll even give you 10,000 talents of silver if you will make a new law to get rid of these people." The king said, "You don't need to pay the 10,000 talents of silver. I'll sign the law. We will get rid of these people. We shouldn't have anybody in this kingdom who doesn't follow the laws like they're supposed to." So in that time, The law of the Medes and Persians was they had a special ring only the king had, and he took it off and gave it to Haman and signed the law with his ring. Instead of signing with his signature, he would put his stamp with his ring right on that. And he said, keep your money and do to these people what you think is best. So the king's scribes were instructed that day to write a law that the Jews were to be attacked and killed and everything taken away from them. The law was sealed with the king's ring, and nothing could change the law, no matter what. No one could change the law. Once it had that king's stamp on it, it could not be changed. This new law was announced throughout the entire empire. But do you remember who else was a Jew besides Mordecai? That's right. Queen Esther was a Jew too. And now there's a new law signed with the king's ring that says that all the Jews must be destroyed. What does that mean, boys and girls? Does that mean Mordecai and Queen Esther herself would be killed? That's what the new law said, that all Jews would be killed on a certain day. Had God forgotten about Esther? Had he made her queen just to see her get killed? Not at all. The story's not over yet, and I hope you'll come back. But I want to leave you with this. This verse from the next chapter in Esther says that God had Esther there for such a time as this. And that verse always reminds me, especially during these hard days that we're going through right now, that God has a reason for it. God's working. God's not hiding. God's not absent. He's here and He's with us, and He has us alive during these days for such a time as this. We should be sharing His good news with others as we go about our day, and maybe even in your homes, that you can share God's good news with those that you live with. I love you all and hope to see you again next week on MVBC Kids. Have a wonderful week.